Okay, this is like church because the doors just closed, so we can start the service. Oh, the door's not closed yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
one of the two. One of the two doors.
One of the two doors, okay. Well, let's start anyway. So we have the challenge here of an afternoon session, and Heath just went through this. It's challenging to make sure that you're all still awake after this beautiful lunch that we had. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this interactive. So first of all, do you know you're in the right room? We're going to be talking about space. Let me ask a question. Who wants to go to space? Raise of hand. Okay. Who is an entrepreneur in space? Okay. Who's an investor in space? Okay. Okay. What did I miss? What did I miss? Yeah.
We're investing.
So thanks for showing up. Thank you for coming. So my name is Stephan Reckier. I'm the executive director of Gen Space, the Global Entrepreneurship Network for Space. Our goal is to put a Gen Moon program together eventually. But what we do is we connect, advise, and inspire entrepreneurs in space. I'm also going to be wearing two hats, not that I'm wearing a hat to begin with, but I'm going to be imaginary hat. I'm going to be filling in for Nate Wiggum. Nate is a venture capitalist. They couldn't make it. He's at a board meeting somewhere in the Middle East. So I'll be talking about investing from an angel perspective. So I also run an angel group. So it is my extreme pleasure to introduce two amazing people that I now have a relationship with for weeks now, a long time, but they're going to really give you cool perspective. So we'll have me as an angel venture capitalist. Oh, by the way, the title for this is Return on Orbit, kind of a cool title. So a guide to investing in space. So hopefully that by the end of this hour, you should know enough to be dangerous to put some money into space and then make it a multiple return on your return on orbit. So let me introduce Francisco Cordova. Francisco is the COO, Chief Operating Officer of the International Space Station, the national lab at the International Space Station, and has a really cool history of also being the director of Arecibo here in the past. So, and Andreka Maldonado, she's the Director of Grants for the Puerto Rico Science,
Technology
and Research Trust Foundation. Did I say it right?
Trust,
okay, Trust. And she has an amazing passion for space as well. So we're going to be representing the investment opportunities from Angel VC, government, right?
Quasi-government.
Quasi-government, right? And foundation, trust, grants, right? So hopefully, and again, ask questions. We have a roving mic that's going to jump around, and we want to make sure that we can address why you're here. So just real quick, so if I can give a quick 101 on investing in space and kind of set the opportunity. So there's a couple of ways that we can all, as entrepreneurs, be invested in space. So first of all, as an investor, you can actually invest in space today. You can buy stock in, for example, Virgin Atlantic. You can go and make a direct investment through your broker or however you invest, right? You can also buy an index fund. There's an index called ARC and other indexes out there that have investment opportunities and cumulatively give you the ability to invest in space. As a company, you can get invested in by foundations. You can do grants through governments, right? You can also directly go to venture capitalists or angels to get funding. And last but not least, you can also do friends and families. And if you know about how that all works, to start your company. So let me, and you're laughing, is it bad? Friends and families bad? No. Well, there's also friends, family, and fools. They add that extra F in there. But no, it's a really great way to start too, if you want to keep good relationships with your friends and family. So let me just quickly have you each introduce yourselves. Francisco, if you want to maybe talk about, so let's see. So Heath had a couple of questions. I'm going to say, introduce yourself, introduce your organization, what excites you about what you do, and what's your favorite space movie?
Oh, that's a good one. I got a lot of good space movies, but pleasure to be here today. My name is Francisco Cordova, Chief Operating Officer for CASES. We are the managing entity of the International Space Station National Lab. And thanks for the invitation. Glad to be here. Our organization, as I said, manages the ISS National Lab. What is the ISS National Lab? So we're an entity that is really just focused on how do we advance space research and development across the board within the U.S. Okay, that's in summary, that's really what we do. And we do that by providing access to this unique platform that we have that is called the International Space Station. I don't know if you knew, but basically any US-based company has the ability to submit a project to fly on station. Okay. Currently, NASA manages about half of the allocation, and when we say allocation is up mass, down mass, and astronaut time. And we, CASIS, manage the other half through the ISS National Laboratory. And our role is a little bit different than that of NASA's. While NASA's really focused on space exploration and that sort of thing, we're really more about how can we really use this fantastic resource that we have as a lab to benefit Earth. Okay, so that is really our focus. And also, how do we create a low Earth orbit economy? We do believe that there is a lot of value in performing research in space, in microgravity, and that we can really leverage that to convert that into return on investment here on Earth. So that's a little bit about the ISS National Lab and CASIS, a little bit about me. Favorite movie?
Well, no, why are you excited about working there?
Oh, am I excited? So I'll tell you this. When you start looking at the types of research that are done at the ISS National Lab, it's hard not to get excited about the future of humanity in general. The types of things that you see on movies, we're doing those now, and most people don't know about that. Things like, for example, 3D printing organs. We're really close to 3D printing a real live organ in space. Can you imagine? Would somebody say, "Oh my God, I have a liver failure. You know, let me just get one printed from space. Let's bring it back down, and then we solve that problem." So it's that type of thing, and that's something that we hope here in the next 15, 20 years we'll get there. But that's what gets me excited, right? Doing that, developing new drug therapies. When you see all the research that's being done, you're saying, "Oh my God, it's really sci-fi things," which actually kind of aligns with my favorite movie, which is Armageddon. Surprisingly, really like that movie. Kind of drilling in an asteroid that's going to come kill planet Earth, and you're trying to save him. I thought that was a fantastic movie. So,
great. Thank you, Francisco. And Andreka?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. And for those of you that are visiting Puerto Rico, welcome. Again, I'm Andreika Maldonado, and I lead the Research Grants Program at the Puerto Rico Science, Technology, and Research Trust. And we are a private nonprofit organization that invests, facilitates, and builds the capacities to continually advance Puerto Rico's economy and its citizens' well-being through innovation-driven enterprises, science, technology, and public health. And right now, our program is the only local funding mechanism that supports research in science and technology. And as we speak, we just funded 2 projects that are going to space. So one of the things that excites me the most is knowing that we are the only local funding mechanism on the island. So that it's very meaningful when I'm working with projects, when we are evaluating projects that we're gonna fund. I tell Grace Rendon that she's part of my team and she's here. Sometimes it can be very lengthy and it takes a lot of time to pick the best projects because our funds are limited. And when it's like 8 p.m., I tell her, we're the only ones doing this on the island. So I try to switch this to a positive thing, so it's very exciting. And a favorite movie, I just saw a movie that I cry on the airplane. Thank God I was wearing a mask. And I forgot the name, but I think it's one of my favorite. It's about space and it's a million miles away. It's about the astronaut, the Mexican astronaut that tried to go to space so many times. So it's a story of perseverance, and I love that movie. But I just don't remember very well the name.
We actually thought about having him come as a
Well,
keynote speaker. We tried.
Well, okay.
tried. It's not
Invite
that-
me next time.
It's not, well, it's
Okay.
not that easy. You invited, who did you
Joseph
invite?
Acaba. I
Yeah.
know how hard it is.
It's not easy working with NASA, no offense, but they have a whole formal process. And I just thought you can just call them up or email them, and that doesn't work that way.
Oh, no.
So, no.
I learned that the hard way, too.
I
When
should-
you
I should
open
have asked
the
you.
link,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
says, do not contact the astronaut directly. So,
Great. All right, so as an investor, what are the benefits of working with a company that maybe went through one of your reviews and got to space? How would you describe that?
No, absolutely. So I think we spent a lot of time and effort evaluating the projects that get submitted to the ISS National Lab. We have a very thorough process that not only evaluates, the actual research itself and the potential outcomes, but there is a very, very big business aspect of it that people don't know. It has to be marketable. It has to have a return on investment at the end. While we do support some fundamental research through partnerships with the National Science Foundation, for example, the majority of the funds that we provide directly to companies have to be on with a product or a service as an end goal. And so I think, and when you look at post-flight funding that companies that have flown through the National Lab, we're about over $1 billion of post-flight funding from VCs and private equity funds after a company has flown through the National Lab. Because it's really hard, right? It's difficult to really get through that gauntlet. But it also provides a unique opportunity because you got, a lot of the times we can do simulations about how things behave in microgravity. There's nothing like actually doing research in microgravity to understand the true effects. Right?
What is a kind of a comparable number when it comes to order of magnitude of support financially that you help these companies get to space? Is there a way to kind of quantify that? Like how expensive is it to get a project up to space?
Yeah, so here's, on average, we'll say each flight is anywhere from $3 to $5 million. So every payload that you send up that we support, it's in that range, between $3 and $5 million is the number that we put. In addition to that, then there are kind of integration costs, right? Where our implementation partners, and we have 36 implementation partners, which are private companies whose whole job is to really integrate that payload and make it into a functional research project on station. Here we have our friends from Rhodium Scientific, who are one of our implementation partners and commercial service providers. That would be in the range of $200,000 to $300,000. So our typical grant is anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000. In addition to the flight, right, the up mass, down mass, and astronaut time, which could be in the range of $3 to $5 million.
So you're making science fiction a reality by offering this support, right? Because before no one could afford that.
And that is the thing, right? It's so difficult to be able to afford, right, on something experimental. Oh, let me just go put $5 or $6 million here just to see what happens in space. And that's why the National Lab was created, right, with the purpose of saying we understand that currently there is a high cost of getting to space. That cost has been being reduced, right, year after year as we have a lot more vehicles, right? We have SpaceX launching, at a much higher rate, and so that helps reduce the cost overall. But it's still expensive, right? And so we enable access to space through the National Lab.
That's great. So Andrejka, how do you make your selections, and what are your criteria? How do people work with you?
So we have several funding mechanisms. So we work with different strategic sectors, being the bigger one, biotech and life sciences. So that's why the projects that we're financing are related to bioscience. One of the first things that we look when we are funding a project is scientific merit. What is the expertise of the team? Are they ready for these? Also, are there milestones? Is the plan clear? All that stuff is very important when we're gonna fund these projects. In addition to that, we believe that people that are applying to our program should have collaborations. Why? Because when you have collaboration, you have more expertise. So you can amplify the impact of these projects. And as I explained previously, we have a peer review process. So we do not evaluate the projects. We have a board that evaluates those projects, and once we determine what the ones that have more impact for the benefit of humanity, new technologies, those are the ones that we invite.
Space is hard, everyone says, right? It has challenges. How does working with you help address those challenges, or how do you handle that?
I think one of the most important things with our funds is that we allow researchers to focus on the research rather than do fundraising. So that's one of the most important things. On top of that, we have collaborations with space agencies, commercial space providers, companies that can also provide assistance. And one of the things that we also provide to our grantees is the technical assistance. We have a partnership with Rhodium Scientific, so they help our researchers to have those projects space ready. Right now we have 2 projects. They do not know, or at least when they started with you guys, they didn't know how to send a project to space. And now we have a stem cell project that it's going to leave in September, but it wasn't going to be possible if we didn't have partners like Rhodium Scientific. And last but not least, I think it's a great opportunity. We provide, these funds help researchers also to provide hands-on experience to undergraduate and graduate students. So we're also fostering the new generation of researchers.
Oh, that's great. With the ISS National Lab, how do you measure the business potential? Or is that something you ask the entrepreneur to give you? Or?
We do, yeah. So we have a variety of requirements. First, of course, scientific merit is one of them, right? And we have both external reviewers and then internal reviewers to the national lab that provide that feedback. That's number one. We have operational feasibility, and so you have to be able to put a operational plan on how you're going to run ops in space, and that's usually where your implementation partners or commercial service providers help the researcher, and that's why, again, partnership, I agree with you 100%, is very important. At the National Lab, we have an implementation partner portal, and so if you don't, let's say you want to go to space, but I don't know how to get there, I don't know what to do, so we have a portal that you can access. And we have all 36 of our implementation partners are listed there, and you can go and see their expertise, what they've done in the past, how they do their business, and you can partner with them before you submit to the national lab. And then, excuse me, the business aspect would be then the final aspect of things, right? That is done currently in-house, so we don't have external business reviewers. And the reason why we don't have that is because it's very unique, right? And so we have to be very open-minded in terms of what is in the art of the possible to be able to fund something, especially if it's early stage, as opposed to something that's a little bit more later stage that has, more significant funding. We also have an investor network and an investor portal. And so usually after flights, we allow those projects to get moved into our investor portal. And we have a network of investors that looks at those projects, and sometimes they reach out directly for funding, or you can reach out to them and ask for funding support.
So you don't take any equity in the companies, right?
We do not, no.
Okay.
As the National Lab, we do not take equity in the companies.
How about you guys?
We do not take equity.
So it's
too.
non-dilutive money.
Non-dilutive.
Okay. For those of you that aren't investors or want to be investors, that's the sweetest money. Besides revenue from your project or your company for your products, non-dilutive money from an investor ear is the best, because first of all, you've gained the trust, you've validated whatever you're doing. People gave you that money, and the company doesn't get diluted. So when people like me come in, we typically want to get equity in the company. We want to have some dilution occur from the owners, which is fine. And that's another misnomer where you don't have to have 90% of your company. It's okay to have control of your company, but the non-dilutive way is a great way to go. So in terms of maybe some questions from the audience, anyone have anything? We want to make sure this is your time. No plants, no planted questions, Heath?
You already asked what the favorite movie was.
Okay, all right. So let's talk a little bit more about what is the average time frame. that it takes for both of your decisions? Like when someone comes to you, is there like a average amount of time? Is it years, tens of years, months, days, kind of thing? So that people know when they want to come to you what to expect.
I think it depends with the volume. When we have the Advanced Research Grant Space Edition, so that's a smaller call because it's a new topic for us. Though we've been funding space projects since 2015, this is the first time that we're doing microgravity research. So since we have less project, it's easier and faster. I will say it took us like maybe 2 months to do the review and then invite them just to submit everything. I think 2 months. But if you're applying to another grant with us, it will be around 5 to 6 months from LOI to the time that we provide the money.
Okay, great. How about you guys?
Yeah, no, for us it's about, to award it's about 4 to 5 months, right? So you'll submit a concept paper, which is really kind of a one-pager short summary of the concept of the research. From there, you would get invited to submit a full proposal. And then after receipt of that proposal, we like to say we take about 60 days after the receipt of that proposal to do external reviews, internal reviews, operational feasibility, and then provide the award. Once you're awarded, time to flight to get to the space station really depends. It can be anywhere from 6 months to 24 months, depending on, how big your payload is, what type of payload is it. Depending on what type of equipment, there are certain types of facilities that are on station that are backed up. So, you have to get in queue and in line to wait until you get your turn to be able to use it. And so it really depends, but it's anywhere from 6 months to 24 months, leaning a lot more towards the 24 months than the 6 months in the majority of the times.
Okay, so let's say 6 months for a decision, right? So the thing here is when you approach them, make sure you have a runway of at least 6 months, which is important, right? They don't come to you, we're totally broke and they need to get things done, so, right.
And also another advice is that not every time you apply for a grant, you're gonna get that grant. So you shouldn't be discouraged. You should use the reviews that we provide you and improve the project and come back. Sometimes people think, oh, you give grants. Okay, I'm gonna tell what I'm doing. And I'm like, no, it's not like that. We have a very thorough process. So the most important thing is also know what you're gonna do, but also we are very available. Sometimes we tell people, if you have the idea but you're not sure, at the Trust we have the resources. So don't be shy, come to us, and maybe we can get you ready for the next goal.
I think the other part of it is it's important for the entrepreneur to have skin in the game. Right, so for us, we try to get to a one-to-one match. A lot of the time is the leverage is a lot more, where it's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times to 1, the amount of funding that we're providing. But the data that we have shows that whenever that owner actually has skin in the game, they have investment of their own money, the likelihood of success is significantly higher. And so that is something that, while it's not kind of a hard metric that we utilize, right, to say go or no go, it's always nice to see some of that investment.
Well, that's really a good point. As an investor, I look for companies that have skin in the game, that have invested in themselves. If they don't believe in themselves, why should I believe in them?
Correct.
And it's not a bad thing, right? So it's really important to have that. You had a question, Heath?
Yeah, actually, to maybe expand on what you were just talking about, advice to increase success rates for proposers submitting proposals to your entities, what would, and in fact, you were just talking a little bit about it then, and Francisco, you were just saying a little bit as well, but can you expand a little bit on what your advice would be to proposers to make a successful proposal?
You want to start? Yep. So for us, I would say a couple of things. Make sure that you have a strong operations, right? So you have to be able to understand what is possible and what isn't possible to be done in space, right? And you do that by, again, talking to your implementation partner or commercial service providers to really understand what the constraints are. A lot of the time we get some really good research projects that have a great idea, But when you go reading through them, you say you certainly haven't considered all of the impacts that space can have on this particular research. You need to go sit down and talk to somebody that's going to be helping you implement this to be able to make it successful. That's number one. Number two, we love to see roadmaps, right? So whenever somebody submits a roadmap that says, hey, this is kind of the first step in what would be a multi-year or multi-flight opportunity for the future, that would be great. We are implementing that as a requirement in some of our larger awards that we are making through the Igniting Innovation solicitation. So this is a solicitation that's focused on actually finding ways to cure disease in space with a very specific focus on cancer treatment and cancer prevention. And these awards are actually anywhere from $1 million to $2 million per award, because it is a multi-year, multi-flight award, which is the first time we've ever done that. So we're about to announce the first winners for Igniting Innovation from last year, and we're opening up a new Igniting Innovation on that same topic for fiscal year 25. But those are some of the things. It's important to see that you understand what you're trying to do in the short term, but that you have a long-term goal, and that you're doing the research considering the implications of that in real life. And what do I mean by that? We're not just sending something to space because we want to try it, right? There has to be a reason why you need microgravity to do this process and to make it better. You have to have a business case at the end of that. You need to be able to sell the service, or you need to be able to sell the product, right? Or there has to be an end goal to that adds value. Otherwise, we're just sending things up there just to try them out, and that's not our role, right? So that, like fundamental science and other types of things, somebody else can fund that, but that's not what we fund.
I believe also having a clear plan, it is very, very important. Clear milestones, and also what's going to happen after your project returns to the Earth. What are you going to do with this? In our case, we do fund researchers and startups, but the majority of our grantees are researchers. That's why it's extremely important to have technical assistance. That's in our case with Rhodium. That's the part that they need, because sometimes, even though the trust is working super hard for those researchers that are interested in entrepreneurship, we're providing them all the tools. Some of them do not have that part, or they don't think about that part when they're designing the research. So it is very important in our case to connect them with someone that can help them through the process.
Great, thank you. We have a question back there?
I'm not a plant, but I have a question about the longevity of the space station. The ISS is scheduled to be dismantled and deorbited in 2030, which is only 6 years away. How does that impact your timeline for all of the projects that are coming in?
Yeah, no, that's a very, very good question. So for us, currently 2030 is the decommissioning date for the ISS as of today. We don't know if that's going to change or not, but based on what we know, it's 2030. So our last open solicitation will be run in 2027, because we have to, that 2-year timeline before we get to fly. And we know that the closer you're getting to the end of life of station, then the more pressure is going to be on resources going up and down to either, remove facilities or, just to send resources up to keep it up and running. That being said, there is a larger future outside of or post-ISS. We have commercial low Earth orbit destinations that are currently being developed by private companies, right? So the plan is really to transition from a government-managed asset, which is the ISS, to commercial private space stations. NASA's currently in the process of doing the selection for those, which is really expected. The Phase 2 award for those is expected to be somewhere in 2026, 2027. And then we'll know more whether there's going to be one commercial space station, or 2 or 3 or 4, or however many NASA's going to fund. There are other folks that are privately funding their stations, and then we'll send them to low Earth orbit here as soon as 2025.
That was going to be my second question. Does the government plan on working with the Jeb McCalebs and Elon Musks of the world, and will you be able to, incorporate more broader and entrepreneurs in that sphere, so to speak, or represent them, other than having just the Elon Musks and Jeb McCalebs and Vast kind of be the only people in the atmosphere?
Sure. So I think the intent right now is, again, to relinquish control right over to the private enterprises, and not really limit who can compete in that space. That being said, initially these commercial stations are going to need a lot of government support, and I think everybody sort of understands the fact that it's a big investment, it's a big resource pool, and so I would expect, and I can't speak for the government because I'm not NASA, so we work for NASA, but I would expect that a large part of the research that is performed in these commercial stations also is sponsored by NASA, right? So they would still be paying for part of that bill, at least in the initial years of these private stations.
We have another question up here. Robert, if you just want to yell out.
Yes, as you mentioned, researchers
we got
are a great
microphone.
part of As you were mentioning, that researchers are a great part of the folks requesting funding for the projects. Do you see them collaborating with private sector actors, or they're individually just pursuing these type of projects? Just trying to understand the ecosystem, how are the different pieces collaborating and integrating together?
Just for the space, or?
Just for space.
So since the space is so new for us, specifically with the bioscience and microgravity research, that's some of the things that we want to do. And we want to connect, and we want them to partner, for example, with the biopharmaceutical ecosystem in the island that is so robust. But again, this is the first goal that we just launched, but it's in our intention. We don't want them to be solos. Collaboration is key if we want to be successful. And we don't need to include only academia and private companies, but the government will be an important part for this. Thank you.
And I'll add to that a little bit. I would say that the majority of the projects that we receive are by a single company. But you're seeing that change a little bit more. As these new commercial LEO destinations get up to speed, you start seeing some of the partnerships come into play, right? And so a lot of the recent, especially for larger awards that we receive, they're already thinking about that roadmap into the future and are saying, okay, we're going to go fly in the national lab on the ISS here, maybe 2 times. We'll fly in 27, we'll fly again in 28. But then I'm flying on the Action module, or I'm flying on VAST, or I'm flying on Starlab, or I'm flying on Orbital Reef. And so they bring in kind of the larger companies to partner with them to say, yeah, we want you guys to succeed because we want that capability in our future platforms. Does that make sense?
Great, thanks. So we have about 15, 20 minutes, so I'm going to change the rule. Oh, another question? Yep. We have a question. Who has the microphone? Oh.
On the face of it, what's the most wackadoodle idea that you've ever funded or sent to space, and what was the ROI from that, or RMO? And from that lesson, how risk adverse are you looking at ideas that seem to be a little outside the box?
That's a really good question. The most wackadoodle one that we have funded, I want to say we don't fund wackadoodle stuff. I'm going to start with that.
Off the record, though.
Yeah, of course. No. So and this is the truth. We do get a lot of projects that come in from left field, and you're like, yeah. And we say no to a lot of them, just because they either are not understanding the operational risks associated with some of these things, or because they're just unfeasible based on the capabilities that we have. So honestly, we don't get a lot of that crazy stuff. We've had some folks that want to do a lot of, some of the interesting ones that I've kind of liked that we haven't been able to really fund, I'll be honest with you, is really more around ISAM, right, and in-space assembly and manufacturing. And can you deploy a set of unmanned vehicles that will assemble something in space, and you're like, okay, but you're like in close proximity to the ISS, and if one of these fails, they're going to go hit something, and then we got, then you destroyed all these, $20 billion assets. So there's kind of stuff like that we don't fund. But in general, it has to be an executable program. We're not really going to fund something that we don't see a chance of success. There are, on the bio side, I think there's some really interesting projects that are kind of higher risk, higher reward, right? Which is, either they work or they don't, right? There's no incremental progress towards that either. If we're successful, that's great. That means we can, really improve drug delivery efficiency, for example. If we fail, well, we accomplish nothing. And so I think that's where we're willing to take some risk and say, okay, there may not be another application for this, but at least we're going to find out if it works or not, provided the ROI is still there. Does that answer your question?
So no wackadoodle factor there.
No wackadoodle
Okay.
factor.
How about you? Interesting?
Can I or can I'm asking Rhodium because yes, we got one. Unfortunately, wasn't funded, but I think it may have a lot of potential. But it was a project about curated meats, and these can have a lot of applications, even when maybe we experience death on the space. How we can curate the meat, I guess, but we didn't fund that one either. But I invite Heath and Olivia if they want to add something additional to that. It will be very interesting because it was a very, very interesting project. However, we couldn't fund it.
Can we have the microphone over? Are you like making salami in space? Is that what this is?
I'm gonna allow Heath to elaborate on that one. Yeah. Olivia.
So I'm all about this project.
Yes, we love the project. We do.
We do. We've got to somewhat get over the ick factor because it's so unconventional. It's so out there. But when people start living and working in space, they're going to start also dying and decaying in space. And in a confined environment, say you're on one of the commercial space stations, what are you doing with the body? Are you jettisoning it out the door? I don't know. We don't know. Are we going to have to preserve it in a way similar to the way we would preserve our food? I think we can maybe kill multiple birds with one stone if we start applying and thinking about preservation, of these materials that we need to bury people later, or maybe there's not even burying in space. We don't know. Cremation, who knows? I don't think that cremation would be even an option. But thinking about forensics in space and, what if there's crime? What if someone dies? And how are you going to preserve a body to look at it? But also, it's also good for a charcuterie board if we can figure out, the preservation techniques.
We have a question in the back, too. So I was going to say, let's change up the rules 1 second. You guys can ask the moderator a question. How about that? Do you have any questions for me? Let me put my VC angel hat on. Think about that while we're answering that question.
Sounds good.
Hi, thank you for your time. I'm Juan David Gomez from Ecuador, and I'm very inspired by what you're sharing. I just had an exit with my startup this year, and thinking about the next steps, and space is definitely something that's very inspiring for me. But not from the technical perspective that you think, but from the human perspective. And actually, my question goes to, we know that astronauts, when they go into space, they're going to have to face a lot of challenges, like being away from family and people. And understand there's some advances or research being done in terms of psychology and what that does to the brain, because we're not sending machines, we want to send human beings with emotions and things. So how's the investment in everything that has to do with mental health and space? And I'm very interested in knowing your perspective there.
Sure, so I can help answer a little bit of that. So there's an entire program at NASA dedicated to this. It's called the Human Research Program. And it is just specific to, how do we live and survive and behave and thrive in space. So since that is really more aligned with space exploration, kind of, long-term goals, that is something that we typically wouldn't necessarily fund unless there is a direct correlation to a benefit back on Earth through the National Lab. NASA, on the other hand, heavily funds HRP programs that study a little bit everything from, what is the decay to what is the psychological stresses, timelines, everything. So I would point you to NASA's Human Research Program, HRP.
And just as a plug, Jen is also doing a survey on mental health for entrepreneurs. If you want to do a project or a company doing mental health in space, you also need to fill out the survey for mental health being an entrepreneur too. So it's really important. So just so you know, that's a project that I'm getting involved in there. Do you have a question, Steve?
You could plug the challenge?
No, why don't you plug the challenge? Hang on, microphone.
Stephan Reckier is actually leading our the Beyond Earth Business Challenge. I'm the president of the Beyond Earth Institute, and it is focused on business models relating to human spaceflight and human occupation. So any model around the psychological factors or anything along those lines would certainly be relevant to that. So anyone has a business model around that is welcome to participate in the business challenge, which can be found at beyondearth.org. So is that it, or do you want to add anything? Stephan?
No, that's great. The finals are going to be in November, and we're looking at having an amazing set of judges, prizes, cash, all that kind of stuff.
Look at that. We may have gotten you some funding already. This is really quick.
Yes.
It's all about matchmaking. It's all about connecting, inspiring. We want to inspire you guys. So, did you guys think of the question yet?
Did you, Jose say you got to mention the hackathon tomorrow?
Okay, we have a hackathon tomorrow. Jose, do you want to talk about it?
So we do have a space business plan hackathon going on tomorrow at 11 a.m. And it's a feeder to the Beyond Space Institute challenge. So you're welcome to participate. Registration just closed 5 minutes ago, but we can make some exceptions.
But you know the organizer, so
Yeah, so come around here. Thank you.
And again, while we're plugging, so there's the Entrepreneurs World Cup. Last year we had 400,000 entrepreneurs apply for this, and we down selected to the top 100 companies, brought them all to Saudi Arabia, and we had 5 space companies come, which was really cool. I mean, that was a never before thing. So there's so many opportunities for entrepreneurs. So
I think I have a question for you. So we have a lot of entrepreneurs in Puerto Rico. We have our BioLeap accelerator, so we work with biosciences. But let's say we have one of those startups trying to pivot and maybe explore space, but they don't know anything. What is your advice for them?
as an investor,
Yes.
okay, so personally, my philosophy is investors should not invest in ideas, right? And I don't want to say stifle creativity or innovation, but if they want to explore it, that's great. It's not investable from our perspective. There are investors that can do that. So the first thing I would say is, when you talk to an investor, understand what their thesis is. If they invest in ideas or
Get something done
or
and then
get
come back to
right.
me. Okay,
So the get something done would be work with you guys,
exactly.
right? Validate it. That's where you guys are very important in that value chain. Once it's validated, then put the business case again in. So investors, again, I'm going to say from my perspective, with all the disclaimers, we want to come in investing in a business, not an idea. So if there's a business model that's proven or customer discovery has been done, then they become investable. Is that okay as an
Yes.
answer? Okay.
Good.
I would say, what is the one thing, if you only had to pick one, that all of the companies you invest in have in common?
Great people. Yeah, and again, from our perspective, we're a small group. We're 45 investors. We become and became very close to our investments. We don't stick our nose in where it's not wanted. We don't force it, but we become smart money because it's trust. So there's trust. So one thing as an investor we look at, amazingly, I somehow record everything that someone says to me, and then I replay it 6 months from then or a year from then, and hopefully all the promises that were made are kept. Ideally, they're exceeded, right? So it has to be trust-based. And you can use different ways of detecting trustful relationships. You have to be kind of a detective, right?
Yes.
And again, that's what I'm sure you guys do, right? And that's what we do.
We call ourselves detectives.
You do? Well,
Yes.
that's it. But if you don't pass that test, it's okay to say no, thank you. It's all about being professional and respectful, right? So there's a lot of businesses out there looking for funding. There's a lot of investors that are eager to invest. It's finding that connection and making that connection happen respectfully. And that's the other thing. We want to have fun. You know, we want to invest in people that we trust and are fun and are personable. Now, that probably eliminates a lot of potential things that we did invest in, but that's okay, right? So you have to have some type of a discipline to it.
So talking about long-term goals, this is an idea. You know, we're funding amazing projects, but then what's next? What is your recommendation? We have like a lot of investors that participate in our demo days, etc. Is there a network that we can access of investors interested in these type of projects that we are funding?
Yeah,
I'm doing my pitch, so maybe I can bring
Yeah,
him
yeah.
to invest the other.
Absolutely. So I'd say space requires patience,
Yes,
and it's called
we know that.
patient capital, right? So it's not a fad. It's not something you're going to get your return in a month or two.
But that happens with science in general, I
Right.
believe so.
That's right. Or clean tech, all those kind of things, right?
yes.
So you have to find the people that are okay with that. If not, you start your relationship and it's going to go south very quickly. They're going to put a lot of pressure on the founders. It's just not good. So if everyone's above board, identifies a couple of things: timeline, time to revenue, and risks, right? Be honest. That's the other thing we tell entrepreneurs. Be brutally honest with us. Tell us what problem areas you might have, but at the same breath, I say, how are you going to address them? And again, I'm sure that's what you guys do, right? You have your matrix of risks, and how do they address the risks? So it's okay. And you'll find people that are okay with that. I had the biggest challenge starting our group near Boulder, Colorado, which for those of you might not know, is kind of like the hub for angel investment in Colorado. In space, in Colorado and all that. But people had very short attention spans. They expected things to happen quickly, and space doesn't happen like that.
I think also I would like to take the opportunity, because we talk about investments, and we have a program at the Trust. I don't lead that program, but I collaborate very closely. So we also have matching funds for SBIRs and STTRs. And I know there's like SBIRs in NASA and the Department of Defense. So we do provide to startups operating in Puerto Rico and small businesses up to $100,000 for phase one, equity free, and up to $200,000 for phase two. I'm just letting you know, because we want to see also projects related to space.
And that's a special art on how to write those, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so
So we provide technical assistance too.
great.
So,
With no equity, that's a good deal.
no equity.
So how come people aren't lining up to talk to you guys? I mean, you'll be
I'm
available.
letting you know.
Any other questions? Anything? Did we miss anything? How about questions for each other? Do you guys have questions for each other?
Yes.
I talk to Andrei a lot, so I don't.
Yeah,
you know.
we talk a
So
lot.
it's a,
Yes,
it's
we
a,
do.
okay. Good. Well, that's the cool thing is you'll find once you start doing business in space, everyone trusts each other and they know each other, right?
Yeah.
Because like, the theme of 3 of our sessions, from Steve's session, Heath's session, collaboration, right? Working together. You don't have to do everything yourself.
Yeah.
You're not going to build all the pieces of the rocket. Even SpaceX isn't doing that, right?
Yeah, and I believe, again, we have so many strategic sectors, and now we have paying a lot of attention to the space ecosystem. And I remember, I don't know you, but Olga, you said something very interesting, that you were her mentor. And I remember when we started the grant with the space, I made you so many, right, like questions about this. So I think it's important also to build those relationships to move an ecosystem forward.
In the traditional sense of investing, investors are looking for a 3 to 5 year exit plan. In space, the industry is kind of just getting started commercially. So I don't know if companies entering and looking for investment in space are wanting to exit in 3 to 5 years. And if they are, they're probably, just diluting the talent and diluting the funding. And it's probably just a bunch of, flash. How do you make good investments when the traditional model no longer really applies?
Are you saying because it's longer now?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. So that's another, I do a whole presentation on secrets of investing, but the whole big thing of if I hear an entrepreneur say we're going to exit in a month or 6 months or a year, we don't want to go on that ride, right? So that's a ride that it looks like they just want to make the money and then pawn it off or get to the next step. And again, no offense to people that have done that successfully. We have to be able to, and you know, the 10-year mark, you know, VC funds are typically 10 years. That's why working with the VC in space makes sense. Because if you exit within 7, 8, 9 years, or not exit, you know, whatever the next step is, return on investment, that really fits into their model. Angels are going to have to be more resilient or understand it. So it's totally, Olivia, it's totally acceptable.
Yeah, and I think, Olivia, it goes to what you mentioned, Stephan, on the trust, right? And having that communication with the investors is like, no, you're not going to see a return on investment in 3 years. It's, you know, you're likely going to have one flight in 3 years. So I think having that conversation up front, there are investors that are interested, right? But not everybody's willing to spend, you know, 10 years to get ROI back, or 12 years, which is what it'll take. Now, I think if the technology or the service is interesting enough, right, then you say, hey, okay, maybe I'm not going to see it in 3 years or in 4 years, but in 10 years is going to be a really big market there. So.
And you don't have to exit. You can do dividends. You can do a lot of different things, right? You don't have to dissolve your company for the sake of your investors. So, I'm going to be respectful of our time. So we have about a minute or two. Do you guys have any closing things you want to say or highlight? Do we miss any burning things? You were asked to come on stage. Did we hit all the topics you wanted to discuss?
Yes, we did.
Okay, how about you?
Oh, no, same here. You know, you want to learn more about some of the opportunities at the National Lab, go to issnationallab.org. So we have solicitations that run throughout the entire year. So any given time you go on our webpage, there's going to be a solicitation that is open and accepting projects. So you want to learn more about that, please go there.
Again, thank you for the invitation, and our website is prsciencetrust.org. We have 16 programs. I'm just going to do the generic one, and you can visit us. And if you see me around, just stop by.
Great. And I'm committed to wearing a different space shirt every day this week. So if you want to find me, I'll be the crazy guy wearing a space shirt. So genspace.co. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Andreka. Thank you, Francisco. Thank you for coming and visiting us. We have board members from GenSpace filtered through the room. They were asking really cool questions. They're not plants, but we thank you for your time. So have a great rest of the time, and thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all.